Hi there, my name is Kendrick, and welcome to another ENFP Mail interview. So today I get to interview Dan. So Dan, welcome, man.
Hello.
So Dan, can you give us what your full type is?
Sure. I am the exception to the rule, the INFJ in OPS. My type is audio, MF, NIFE, last, sleep play, consume last.
Got it. So you have like the very standard INFJ uh, animal stack, as Myers-Briggs as it could be. The only difference possibly is that you have feminine NI instead of masculine NI. I think that would be more like the pure blood INFJ, but you're very close to the actual like MBTI pure blood INFJ. When you get the results back, what did you think and how did you feel?
Blah! I wasn't expecting the consume last. So I looked at it and I was like, huh? What are they seeing? But the reality is I just refused to consume last as an option. So I was proving myself right by not understanding it. I got 7 coins right on my self-typing, and my self-typing before that, I was 8 out of 9. So I didn't have too much disorientation to figure out. It was really just the second, third, and fourth animal. Everything else, I had managed to use the system, use the community feedback to hone and tweak. Like I first thought I was double feminine, but then I learned I'm super controlling in the sensory, and I don't have that like locked in my intuition like I can see from some masculine NIs.
All right. So were you able to see yourself as an INFJ before you even got type? Like, did you already see that?
Yeah, the very first time I ever took a Myers-Briggs test and I learned this concept, introverted intuition, I'm like, ah, I sud I suddenly have light, language, like some ability to recognize parts of myself that like the dominant culture we're in doesn't really give you the gift of understanding intuition or even appreciating it. It's quite it's not a part of education. It's not even really a part of religion, which is sort of more SI procedural. So way back, maybe a decade, I was like, wow, this feels so intensely relevant to me. And then through OPS, my first thought was, I've got to be sleep first. And then I listened to people talk about what that meant, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't me. Um, yeah, so uh, yeah. Then I guess the next block of learning was appreciating what a masculine DI was like and why being a double decider feels so balanced between me versus them, us, we, they, all together. Yeah.
So I want to ask you something that we both share very similarly, actually. So for both of us, our first animal is double feminine. And then for both of us, our last animal is double masculine. So that is very fascinating. So I wanna cover that. Let's start with your first animal first. It's blast. It's teaching your known information. It's NF. So it's what's the point? What's the purpose? What's valuable in the abstract world? But it's double feminine. Feminine FE, feminine NI. So what's going there? What's going on there for you with that double feminine first animal?
Um, I think it was a real struggle for me to see blast because I was just trying to track, well, how often do I really say stuff? How often do I interject? How often do I teach verbally? But I'm always letting information flow out. But my sense of it is that maybe this is a double decidery thing as well. I can feel what I'm saying landing. So because I'm sensitive to how my words affect others, the way that I sometimes talk is softer and gentler, because I'm already thinking this person's going to struggle with this aspect of this lesson. So I should like soften it, slow it down, add another example. Yeah. I like a real world scenario. I think I used to be quite religious, but I always struggled with the Great Commission, if you know what that is. It's to spread the gospel. I'm like, how do I take responsibility for giving people a message? I was just always quite hesitant and baffled. Like I knew what I believed, but I really wrestled with how I would convert dogma, doctrine, experience into something that I thought was like a worthwhile package for someone else. Because I could really feel this is the dilemma I'll create in your life if I give you this knowledge. This is the cost. This is the pain. This is the way it shakes your worldview. And I could just never become a missionary because I was too attentive to the ramifications of what I would put onto people. Yeah, but that's sort of in the past.
You are no longer religious then?
No, not at all.
When did the shift happen and what happened? How did that shift occur?
Um, this, I guess, is a consume last story. I was in graduate school doing my second master's degree, and I still didn't internalize evolution as a valid scientific theory. But I was taking evolutionary psychology and thinking that I could just play this consume last game of putting up little gates all around the knowledge and controlling how it came in. But to be honest with how I was going to engage with the literature and write essays, it forced me to it forced me to consume and then to organize and then to confront the fact that I'm responsible for how I stack my reasons. And once the reasons were there and I could see them, yeah, that that sort of tipped that Jenga tower over.
How did you feel when everything collapsed? You know, because you built up this worldview and then you consume this evolutionary stuff, destroyed your worldview, and now you have to rebuild again. What like emotionally, how did you react to that? And also intellectually, how did you react to that?
It was definitely a slow process. I guess yeah, when you have both NI and TI making stacks, you can sometimes cheat it and you can like insulate one part of your intuition from another part. So I did that. My experience of moving out of faith was sort of a lot like the image of a rock climber that like hammers those pegs into the vertical face. It was like one by one, just pulling the pegs out and having this fear that I'm going to fall to my death now. I'm pulling away the support structure from my mind, from my worldview. And then each time I did that, I was like, oh, I'm still on solid ground. Yeah. And in other parts of my higher education, I was able to learn, I guess, a consume last lesson, which was, whoa, Daniel, you you judge knowledge really quickly from a distance and to control it. But almost every time you put up your biggest wall, that's the lesson you have to learn. And I kind of caught that pattern, that life was making me internalize the things that I was keeping farthest away from me. Just the ideas that I thought, no way that's true. This guy's an idiot for believing this. What? How can that be what they believe? That was when I sort of put myself on a path to eventually have to confront, yeah, and allow it to seep in, and then ultimately, and with a bit of humility, I guess, go, okay, I'm now convinced.
Let's go over the opposite of blast, which is consume. So you have a double masculine ST consume. It's gathering facts. It's block banging, and another definition of consume is also self-awareness from an external perspective. Because sleep is self-awareness from within, consume is self-awareness from the outside. So Dave has the same problem. It's like he's not aware what he's actually how he presents himself to other people. So I'm not sure how your awareness is when it comes to presenting yourself to other people, but it is double masculine, so there is that added gravitational pull towards it. So what has your experience been like with self-awareness from an external perspective, not internal, external, like almost like a ghost that comes out of your body watching yourself like a movie,
I would say that I'm not naturally talented at it at all, and that you having the mirror image temperament, so my consume is your blast and my blast is your consume, that in my life ENFPs have been instrumental in helping me figure out what myself might mean to other people. So that's been a really key element. And for like 20 or 15 years, I've called myself an ENFP magnet, because we just exchange stuff in such a useful and mostly non-triggering way. But I thought I was sleep last because that lost SE in my consume, I'm just so impoverished on the information on what's happening in my body, what's happening around my body, what's happening in the world. That's just, it's baffling. And it's like, when I try to gather through SE, the whole world is just spinning like way too fast for me to like, when you're looking at like a fan and you're like, can I catch just one blade of that fan moving? No, it's just like a whir. So when I'd look at sleep in other people, I'd think, oh, they're so aware of their bodies. They know how to like when to eat and when to sleep and when to use the convenience. And I'm like, I'm so confused. Like, I'm supposed to have a habit. But double masculine consume, I do find it really peaceful to super control what I consume. So currently I'm on keto, and I just love the fact that it's turned off the intrusion of hunger into my life. I kind of just start the day with my bulletproof coffee, and then around mid-afternoon, I'm like, oh, okay, I can cope with thinking about food once per day. So that's one thing. My entire life is about controlling sensory overload. I will wear earplugs in the city or glasses, or I'll wear clothing that blocks out my sense of breeze, or I'll walk in a really particular way. So I walk sometimes on the balls of my feet, and each time the ball of your foot touches the ground, I just like have a split second of mindfulness, and I'm like, that's the amount of mindfulness about the world that I can cope with, just little rhythmic taps. Yeah.
That's an interesting way to live life. It's have you ever entertained the notion of going all in the sensory and see what would happen? For example, one of your INFJ types, he's a UFC fighter. His name's George St. Pierre. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Greatest welterweight fighter of all time. He won 9 title defense, and he's an INFJ. Went all in the sensory instead of intuition world. He did go back to intuition after he retired from fighting, but yeah, he went all in the physical training aspect of it, the chaotic, and he tried to control it. Obviously, in fights, he always dictated the rhythm of the fights. Like if his opponent is good at striking, then he would only wrestle them. If they were good at wrestling, he would only strike them. You know, so he would always fight them where they were weakest. So he always controlled the tempo. So he was still an IJ because he controlled the tempo, but he definitely lived in that world where it was very SE. And he thrived. No, he, like I said, it was no one. He hardly lost, just because no one can think so many steps ahead like he can, because he was an INFJ. So it feels like when an INFJ goes all in the sensory, because they're almost like cheating. They can see the end that they and combined with the physical training that you become unstoppable. So I don't know if you've ever entertained the notion of, especially you're double masculine with the ST too, right? So you have like a untapped potential that is sadly untapped. Like if you went all in this thing, who knows what you could be, you know? So is that something you've ever entertained, or has it something that just you kind of just blocked out of your life?
I guess like I've daydreamed about like throwing in the PhD and just like cutting trees for a living, which would be quite sensory. I have 3 younger brothers, so we would wrestle growing up, but there was just a day. It was very distinct, and I was no longer able to beat all 3 of them at once, so I just gave up. I gave up on that. I think, oh yeah, so if you look at my animal stack, I'm play, consume, demons. And what's fascinating about that is that my consume is totally facilitated by the social. So if I can get other people in, then I become a different person. They unlock my ability to consume and to interact. Yeah, somehow people can even turn off my sense of pain, like, or overstimulation. So I can't say I've figured out how to do that on command, but there's definitely a social aspect to making consume like a safe thing to do. And I guess in my doctoral studies, I am relying on a lot of the NISE axis, which is attentiveness to like micro differences in the sensory world. So Dave and Sham will call this going over the known, but it's not sticking with what you know. It's going over the known, but to find that one hair's breadth of difference and focusing on, now I've found one little bit of difference. Now I found one little bit more, and constructing something out of that. So my interest is in several things, but one of my hooks is ASMR, which is a really short, few seconds long experience of tingling. And my mind is really happy to just go over and go over and go over, but to figure out, how can I ask slightly different questions? How can I do things just to pull the lid off this little tiny sensory experience? And yeah, and hopefully do a good thesis. Anyone in the community is welcome to message me about ASMR if they've got opinions. Eventually I'll be ready to do data collection. But just like raw SE spectacle and strength and performance, yeah, it's amazing to me. And I suppose, like, as a teenager, my favorite X-Man was Rogue, because she just has instantly physical and vulnerability, flight and strength. And I'm like, well, wouldn't that be perfect? The world, this horrible, threatening world would suddenly be like a cupcake. Yeah.
It's definitely very interesting how you describe that. I feel like when you were describing finding that like small sensory thing, I was almost imagining you like polishing something, and there would be like that small piece that would be sticking up, and you were like, nope, we gotta shine that corner so that it's absolutely pristine and perfect. I don't know if that relates to you, but that's how I pictured what you were describing. Um, it's also interesting how you said that when you have the tribe involved in let's say you're socializing, then the consume becomes safe. So Dave and Chan, the way they described it is for double deciders like us, we use the people to fight the thing because the thing is the enemy. For the double observers, they use the thing to protect them from the people because the people is what's scary, right? So for us, we're using the tribe and ourselves because we're comfortable with that middle stuff. So I want to talk to you about being a double decider, being balanced with self and tribe. Your type is very interesting because you're tribe above self, yet you have sleep above play. So you like to serve the tribe, but you also have a wall with the tribe before you would play with the tribe. So it's weird. It's like serve, but there's a wall, but then you can play with them. Like what's going on there? It's very it's almost like there's like a lot of gates um involved, when it comes to dealing with people.
Wow, I'd not had that image in my mind before. It sounds really good, really relevant. Yeah, okay. NI plus an obligation to the tribe plus save your sleep. Like that was who I was as a teenager before my TI started waking up. So I thought I was a psychic because I couldn't see how, but I was constantly using intuition and so the social spectrum of value to sleep process and around and around and around and people's sort of emotive states or like the just the weird way of attending to the world with no SE. So SE's out of the picture. All you have is like vibes, tribe vibes, informational vibes, like just overwhelming, baffling, abstract stuff. I just thought, whoa, this is a strange world to live on. Why isn't anyone else acting like this is what they can see? But the way you set that up is like the structure of why that was happening to me, that just unconsciously I was obligated to draw in from others and to process it in a weird way that that my identity wasn't fully formed. So my identity was always being swayed because I could tribe align. Yeah. And then just gradually in my 20s, this masculine TI started to balance out the seesaw. And I just sort of was less and less captivated by this totalizing world of abstract stuff that always sort of managed to become like understandable patterns, but they were like little NI patterns. So I could never see how the world on a macro level went together. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that. That's kind of cool.
Let's cover your sleep since we're already in this topic. So sleep is processing what your known information, going over your known information. But your sleep is NT. It's kind of like my first animal. I have NT play, but yours is sleep. So we have it in the opposite direction, essentially. Now, every animal is correlated with a type. So blast is an IJ animal, sleep is an IP animal, play is an EJ animal, and consume is an EP animal, right? So you would be the least EP because you have consume last. So you would be a pure blood IJ essentially. Now, it's interesting because you are tribal of self, but your second animal is an IP. So you essentially embody the IP's essence, and the IP's essence is the hero. If you look at the tribe, um, every type has a function in a tribe, right? The EP goes to the forest or the jungle or the ocean, gathers the resources, brings it back to the tribe. The IJ organizes it so that we can survive the winter. Because if it's just EP, then all the resources will be gone, and there's no one that essentially save the tribe from the upcoming hardship. You know, your NI can see all the chaos is coming, right? So you're like, okay, there's going to be hardship up ahead. So let's conserve, let's control what we have, right? So okay, the EP and IJ's role is pretty straightforward. It's obvious. Okay, the EJ, they're there to manage the tribe, make sure that everyone is either things are working for them, PE, or people are happy, FE, right? And they're making sure that they're serving everyone. Then there's the IP in the end. So the IP's role is very interesting because they're the hero, essentially. The hero, what they do is they show you that what you think is your capacity or your limit is false. Because if you think this is your bar, then the IP will set the bar even higher. And they'll show everyone, nope, you know, their goal is to be better than everyone, right? The IP, it's to be significant, right? So once everyone sees that how further you can go as a person, as an individual, then everyone can also rise up, because then now that is the new truth, right? Essentially. So your type is very interesting because you control stuff, but you have like that internal IP in you. So where are you breaking the limits of human capacity, and how do you see yourself, you know, as you grew up, trying to break through the mold of what is possible for a human to accomplish?
That's a fun question. I think maybe it's in the realm of like self-analysis. Yeah. How do I put this into words? Like if you were to find me on like the 95th percentile on something out of all the different traits you could ever measure, I imagine that like some kind of emotional intelligence or emotional self-perception, even though I can't physically perceive myself so well, yeah, is kind of that trait. I've always never understood why people are like flimsy on what their standards are or what their goals are. Well, not really goals, but like aspirational goals. Yeah, I would almost like prefer to stay silent than to give you a sentence that I wasn't like committed to on multiple levels. I feel often that when I speak, my words are being etched into stone, so I like choose them really carefully because I expect people to be able to hold me to account for the things that I say, and I am endlessly baffled by how just how negligible and how redundant other people's speech can be about themselves, about the world, about their ideas. So I did a master's degree in screenwriting and film production, and I got to the end of that and I'm like, oh well, Daniel, what story do you want to tell? And I'm like, a story about what it means to be a human being. And that's eventually what brought me back to psychology and pursuing that for another master's degree. And one of my professors said, oh, there's a special topic in emotion and affect. Maybe you should check that out. And of course, what was my consume last reaction? there. That sounds so dumb, but was it? No, it was the most revolutionary and eye-opening and inspiring and complicated way to begin explaining humans and society through the lens of how our cultures give us a pattern for how to do our emotions, that they aren't just like anger isn't just an instruction in our brain, but it's full of appropriate steps and durations and intensities that we learn from outside ourselves. And I guess that's the only time I've ever gotten first in class. So that's kind of my wheelhouse. My specialization is theorizing about personal meaning making through the experience of having a body, rather than just like philosophers will sort of argue as if your body's not part of the question so much. It's more just, can you do this argument in the right structure? And some parts of critical psychology or post-structuralist feminism is super language focused. So you get all of the stuff that people say, but you don't record, well, the fact that they had a body in the moment, a body that felt intensity and amazement and fear and frustration and confusion. And my favorite feeling is the feeling of certainty, and what on earth certainty is made out of, because it drives our lives. We're certain about a lot of things, and to pick that apart and to not be bored picking the same thing apart or terrified by it. I guess that's like somewhere my IJ-IP blend is. I can be heroic in this specific abstract domain. Yeah, maybe that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it's a good example for sure. Your sleep is also NT. So what are you trying? So what do you feel is an area in life that you've kind of worked towards figuring out, with that NT, and because it's sleep, it's personal, you don't want anyone to be involved in this process. This is something that you personally want to do as a solo mission. Sure, you'll present your findings to the tribe later on, but the figuring out process is going to be yours. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, I guess I've only really been acquainted with confronting my own sleep for 2 weeks, because before that I thought it was in a demon state, and I mostly overlooked thinking about it. But yeah, so NT can often function as like a truth sense. So I guess if it's NT with sleep, it's processing like hierarchies of truth, maybe. And I feel I do that pretty naturally. I'm not sure I can like find a really helpful example, but yeah, because it is one of the topics that I'm still just at the beginning of creating a story about. But sort of at any time of my life, if you'd spoken to me, I was probably a bit punchy with what my sense of truth was, even if I was wrong. Yeah, sleep.
Well,
It's impractical, that's for sure. Like I can probably see it from the void of how different my life would be if I ST slept. Yeah, that'd be beautiful. Yes.
yeah, definitely those ST sleep guys, they're doing something great, because if you look at the top 10 richest people in the world, they all have ST sleep in the savior state. They're all like INTPs and ENTPs, right? So they're definitely doing something right with that ST sleep. It's definitely broken. It's one of the most powerful animal stack there is, or animal.
Yeah.
Um, let's cover your TI. So you said that when you were younger, you punched people with your masculine TI. What would spur you? Because you're savior FE, right? So when would you make that swing from tribe to self, and then you would, you know,
Hmm.
fight back with that TI?
Um,
TI is gonna be that's your masculine self, right? So when does that swing happen?
um, well, I have to get a little serious and a little personal. I was a depressed teenager, so there wasn't a lot of change or mobility for 10 years of my life that were just weighed down by that physiological and mental struggle. But somewhere in my 20s, I could just sort of feel something solidify inside me. And even now at 42, I'm still learning. I'm learning all of those boundaries. But in my 20s, it was just like a sense that my conviction lived inside of me, like an object that I could interrogate and be to have trust in, that I could trust that when I really worked on a notion or a concept or did some of that NT sleep, that it was trustworthy in my life, and that put me in some positions of slowly owning my sexuality and allowing that to actually affect social relationships and to create distinctions when normally I would just silently try the line and be a good little disciple. Yeah. uh, but it made me, when I hear other gay men talk about their youth, some of them just instantly are able to push into the world based on this. But it took me so long to get to that stage. I came out to my parents at 14, so I had the entity truth of it. Like I knew this was a real idea, but I didn't know, well, I just put it in a block of ice. It just was unmoving, unchanging, just this thing I could see, but it was frozen. And then in my 20s, just different stuff happened that I had to thaw that out and then start actually letting it change and shape elements of my life. Yeah, I forgot what the question was.
That's okay. You actually, even though you forgot it, you did explain it very, very well. So once you thawed out that part of you that you encased in ice, and you said that you started living with it, how did your life change?
Um, well, it wasn't pleasant because I lost a lot of social groups. I lost a connection to a bunch of different staggered religious communities, and the impetus for meeting a lot of my friends weekly, like that, just all got broken up. So it was a really hard time, but never did I think that I could squash that TI back down and go back to just aligning with the tribe all the time. Yeah, so I had to endure rejection and loss and pain for a lot of years. Yeah, I guess that's some part of a hero's journey. Hmm. Hmm.
I think it's great that you were able to stand on your own identity, your own TI, despite the loss of the tribe and the loss of social connections. Um, it's often said that when one door is closed, another one opens, right? So we can kind of start transitioning over to your play, SF play. When you start transitioning to that new life that that you have now fully accepted or have begun accepting as, you know, an important part of you, and you're standing on it now concretely. Obviously, yes, you did lose social groups and tribes, but were you able to form new ones? Did you form new connections with uh, you know, people that accepted you for who you are, as opposed to people that, you know, was still sticking to, you know, their limited ways of thinking?
Uh, kind of. I guess because I was on a different route of like delayed development, it meant that when I came back to higher education, I was the mature student. So that was a bit different. And in New Zealand, there's a real pressure. Like a lot of people aspire to move to Australia and London. So we call it the brain drain, where a lot of our top minds leave the country for higher paying jobs overseas. So while I was able to create new social connections, a lot of the time they were moving out of the country, so that I'd sort of lose them faster than I could build new ones. And that was a little bit baffling. But only in the last year have I put more effort into creating community, and I've found like a couple of overlapping queer spirituality movements that are just all about bringing your heart to other people, sharing yourself authentically without judgment, and yeah, like lots of FE value that I like. Play itself is a really weird one, and um I'm kind of bashful about my play because it, I'm like, okay, play level 1, play level 2, and then play level 8.5, play level 9. Like I don't have that calm building up of momentum. I'm like, okay, the play game's on, and I notice that overwhelms other people, so I try to keep a lid on it, because I just don't know how to like slightly adjust the midsection
Yeah.
to make play fun and not scary.
Well, I mean, it sounded like when you put a lid on it, it got worse because it became a volcano, right? Because like, you know, instead it because now it erupts, right? So it goes from 1, 2, and then 9, 10, right? Uh, it sounds like it's like a lack of practice because like you do have play as in a demon state. So it sounds like the only way you could figure out how to get, you know, to access 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, as opposed to just 1, 2, or 9 and 10 is practice, you know. So it sounds like not enough repetitions in your part. um
Yeah, I suppose I have like one thought about specifically SF play, which is characterized by a sensitivity to popularity.
yeah.
For my entire life, like whatever is in fashion is just like, it has this massive spotlight on it, and it creates such cringe in me. Like I've never ever been able to do what's fashionable, because it just seems like way, way, way too obvious. Like I'll never do the in fashion haircut, or what the pants everyone likes, or the shoes. And I'm like, how do people do this? How do people just like grab these fashions and fads and trends and act like it's relevant when it's so manufactured? So maybe if my play was more savior statey, I would just get into that dynamic a lot easier. But it's so clunky and so on the nose that I feel embarrassed about the way popular things feel. It's really weird. And then when I bring that ball bounce energy, um, what comes with it. My last sleep comes with it, and then people find me opinionated and self-centered, and I'm like, but I'm bringing you the cool ideas. Let's bounce the ideas, and like, give me your ideas. Let's bounce them. Let's bounce all of this stuff. And that's disorienting for other people. They don't want you to have their ideas or play with them. But I'm like, that's what I want to play with. Like, shut out the sensory. Give me all the abstract fun. That's where I feel safest. But yeah, I mean, I've got another 40 or 50 years to figure out how to bring the sensory into my play and how not to scare people with intensity.
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely the higher your play is, the better you would be at that ping pong game, back and forth. Yours is SF, right? So it's not going to be intuition. The back and forth is going to be SE, right? So that SE part is what I feel like the FE maybe you can do, like the bouncing of the emotions, the vibe. I feel like maybe you're more comfortable with that. You do have FE in a savior state, but the SE, your type is like a weird there's like a disjoint almost, because like FE is your savior state, being NF first, right? But you only have like 50% use of it because the other half is in the demon state. So with the SE, right, the FE SE, it's like your sleep is like your self-awareness is also 50%. It's like internal self-awareness is there, but external is like gone. So it's like, so you're almost like you are in half the world, you are there and very strongly, and the other half is like a fog that you're trying to solidify, but it's just, like every time you touch it, it's almost like it's like, I don't know if you watch X-Men, so I'll use the X-Men example. It's like Magneto, right? He has like the magnetic field, and then you put your hand in there and you get like forced, like thrown out, like before you can get deep. I don't know if you relate to that analogy, but
Yeah, you're really good, Kendrick, at like giving novel frames of reference. That's good.
yeah. Yeah, I use the X-Men because you talk about a rogue earlier, so I'm like, okay, let's use Magneto then.
Yeah, it is a weird type. I suppose the one coin that I utterly just didn't see was the energy info one, because I have double activated blast and double masculine consume, and then I just have my little energy conundrum in the middle.
Right.
It was so easy to overlook them and think, oh no, I take information so seriously.
Yeah.
But yeah, confronted with my official type, I'm like, okay, I do have this responsibility to manage my energy, and if I don't, I'm utterly unproductive. I can't just go do it if I haven't like kept things in balance. So I'm still beginning to figure out what even that means for me, how the energy game is played. Maybe Dave and Shan's examples always confused me, because when I'm watching them, I'm like in my serious double masculine consume phase. I'm like, I'm now consuming the ST, and I'm not about this energy jokiness, but the reality is I don't want information for information's sake. I want it to push and to play and to be silly and to be to be provocative, to open up new things, so to really affect how bodies work, feel, and are organized. Just to think that you hold information in this little blast consume back and forward and try to not make it activate the world is a bit baffling. Yeah.
Well, I
Giving
mean,
me think about.
I mean, it's I like the OPS message. You have to work on your fourth animal, fourth function. OPS was created by a consume last person, along with Chan, of course. But it's obvious Dave is the mastermind of the two. And he did it by consuming more than a consume person would. He consumed all these videos of all these people on the internet, and then took notes on them, and kind of figured out, okay, what is this person doing? What is this person's fear? And it was true consume. And by consuming more than everyone else as a consume last person, he got so far ahead that he built this OPS system that we are now using. It's brilliant. And it seems like the magic does, he gave us like a map, which I think is a great gift, because, the map to figure out how to be whole, essentially, because we have everything. It's just that we don't use enough of some of our parts. You're not missing your fourth function and your fourth animal. It's there. It's up to you to use it or not, right? So like, I don't know, like the few times you did use your consume, your world got changed dramatically. It wasn't even a small change, you were religious at one point, and then you consume about evolution and stuff, and now it's like, now that big part of your life is not even there anymore. So I really feel like it's amazing when you use your fourth animal. Like for me, I'm SF last, right? So when Dave gave me my type back, he said, Kendrick, you can process your emotions. So that part of the SF sleep you can do. But maybe you want to practice that more SF stuff, go watch this people doing, like, making weird noises on the internet, like, just see what they're doing with that SF stuff, right? So in my day job, I teach fitness, and I teach spin. It's a cycling class. And when the pandemic started whittling down, and the facility I worked at reintroduced spin again, and the government of Canada finally allowed group classes to run again. On the first day of class, only one person came to my spin class, and that was my girlfriend. Okay. Second time, it was like another person. There was two. And then I started doing my hair. I started doing my hair. I started spiking it up. And now I have a full class, 13 people with a 1 week waiting list. And I'm like, all I did was change my hair. I didn't do anything different. I'm playing the music that I feel is good. And the only thing I did was change my hair, which is the SF, right? Like, and I'm like, oh, Jesus, like, I organize, for me, it's SI. So I'm organizing the physical. So for me, it's the hair. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, if I change one thing about the physical, what would happen if I change some other stuff? So I'm always like baffled at like the OPS code is mind blowing. You change like one small thing, you use your fourth function just a little bit, or your fourth animal just a little bit, and it like dramatically changes your life. So I'm a big believer in it for sure. It's definitely insane.
Yeah, maybe I've got two comments on that. The first is that what you've described of Dave is pretty cool, because you can kind of reconceptualize those 9 coins as 9 ways a consume last has tried to put gates on the complexity of the world, to limit it, control it, filter it, and make it digestible, which is it's a really fun way to see that the conflict and the deficit of a last animal can be a strength. Because if he was higher in consume, he wouldn't want to hold on to those filters. He'd want to push all the 9 coins away and have 9,000 coins, or 1 coin of just of fun or not fun. So yeah, having a last animal sounds debilitating, but there's a way of recontextualizing it as a strength that doesn't mean mimicking consume firsts all the time. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
No, I get what you said. Well, they also said that someone that has the animal first cannot really teach it, because it's in such a subconscious state, right? So
Yeah.
When you have to work for something, then you can teach it because you can break down the struggles and how you got through the struggles on your journey to not even mastery but competence. Really, you know, you're never going to be the best at your fourth animal and fourth function, but if you can get competence with it, that changes everything, right? Like Elon Musk is you know, sleep consumed, right? And you know, his third and fourth animals play blast, yet he's working harder than everyone else. This guy's an energy dominant guy, and you know, he's sleeping on the floor of his factory, and you know, and he's working like ungodly hours, like 16 to 18 hours. So he's blasting to get things done, right? And you know, and he's creating the coolest thing, SF. You know, his blast is SF, right? As an INTP, and you know, he blasted out like, you know, Tesla and SpaceX. All these are cool, right? So they're popular. You know, and you know, magical things happen when you dabble into your fourth function and fourth animal. And like you said, it's not like you're going all in. Really, it's maybe the best word to use, because you use the 9 coins, and you said there was doors within the 9 coins, right? It's more like a selectively choosing which of that aspect matters the most, and then you bring that out, you know. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. The motif of consuming for the self. That sounds so dangerous. Like I can consume for every other reason other than me,
Right.
because it's so jarring to have to yeah, to really pull in stuff that challenges the self. And I guess because it's my demon, it's sort of why I'm even doing a PhD on what is the intimate little story of um, of telling a story about your own body that learns, that responds, that has strange feelings, but has to put it into a context. Because I can slow down my consume window to smaller and smaller fragments, I can like not be overwhelmed by this this tidal wave of knowledge. So like the opposite kind of psychologist to me would be like, oh, I've got to do massive surveys with 20,000 people and get big, broad, huge data. And I'm like, okay, that's like a real savior consume way of doing research. I'm like, slow it down, slow, little, stop, slow it, whisper, give me the smallest little bits. Let me analyze this. Let me hold it, because I'm consume last, and I can manage that, even though I know that it is a really key lesson for my development to not go, ooh, yuck. I can feel disgust for things so easily and just block it out of my life. And to have the self-awareness that actually when I say, ooh, yuck, this is horrible, this is gross, I probably have something to learn. When I feel hostile towards someone else, I probably have something to learn. Like I've gone through that somewhere in my maturing to have that confrontation that, that my gut instincts aren't always right, and it's okay to like, to question them. Yeah.
I like that indicator that you've developed for yourself. Like the yuck feeling equals, oh, there's something in this, you know, the repulsion. The other thing too, I don't know why, but when you were telling me your story about, you know, letting information in slowly, like in small bits to kind of control the consume. I don't know why, but I started imagining like an INFJ getting tortured, like sitting on a chair and like having their eyelids open like this, and like being forced to watch like hours on end of like different information, and then like there's like the person that's torturing you will put like eye drops in your eye just to keep you keep you going. You know, you've probably seen that in like you know, like spy films or whatever. And I don't know why I pictured that. You, especially when you're talking earlier, when you were talking about like the tidal wave of information, I was like, I don't know. I started picturing that like just like someone tapes your eye open and you know
I
forces.
wonder if the author of A Clockwork Orange was an IJ, because I think that's how that ends. And this is just how the film ends. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but like it's torture because it's the information coming in because they're not actually like beating you or anything. You know, it's just information overload. No, and not just information overload, but no time to process because it just keeps coming in, right? You don't have time to organize anything. It just keeps coming in for days on end, right? So, um, all right.
Kendrick, did you grow up with The Never Ending Story as a movie?
No. How old are you again? You're 41?
42. Yeah.
42? I mean, you're not that much older than me. I'm 37. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I just look young, but I'm 37. But no, I didn't. I heard of it, but I didn't watch. I didn't see it.
Okay. That's sort of a hero's journey in itself, where it's sort of in the end of the film, the hero has to go through two different gates. And the first one are these two giant sphinxes that shoot lasers. And that's super SE. And that always terrified me. Just, oh, how does he know when the lasers are coming? How does he know how fast he's got to go? Like, there's a dead knight in shining armor. He's been lasered to death. This is so horrific. But the second gate is a mirror, and the mirror shows you your true self. And I'm always like, who's afraid of that? It just seems so natural and normal to cope with that, I guess, the sleep process version of the self. So maybe some of the people in OPS who had that film as a childhood favorite would see that point. But anyway.
I feel like the mirror is consumed though. It's not really sleep because sleep is inside. Consume is seeing yourself from the outside. So that's kind of a I think a lot of EJs would be scared to look at the mirror. You know, I mean we're double deciders. So for us, we're like, yeah, we're balanced in the middle. That's not a problem. That's why you were more scared of the laser, right? Because it's SE, right? Like, pew! You're like, gosh, shit, you know, like you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I get it. So it's kind of funny though that I'm like, if I saw that, I would just think it's cool because like I like chaos. I'm an EP, right? So chaos is like I'm comfortable in chaos, right? Like
Wow.
when something chaotic happens, I'm just like, whatever. It's like it's more like a nuisance, you know. I'm like, all right, here we go. But it's not like I'm freaking out or anything. It's more like a nuisance, you know. Like it's not something that's scary or thing, you know. Like control's more scary for
Are
me.
there many IJs in your life?
Oh, my girlfriend's an IJ. Like yeah,
Hey.
my mother's an IJ, my sister's an IJ. I'm surrounded with so many IJs. Yeah, I mean, you can't help it. If you're an INFJ, then your friends are gonna be ENFPs and ENTPs, right? So I'm an ENFP, so my friends are guess what? INFJs and INTJs. My girlfriend's an INTJ jumper, right? So I'm like, okay, you know, she got typed by Dave and Shan. So you know, complete opposite animals as me too. Kind of funny how that worked. Um, so
That's brilliant.
yeah, even the guy I'm working together at possibly being a business partner next year for my ENFP mail channel, he's an INFJ also. So I'm like, okay, well, you can't help it. It kind of just happens, like you know, naturally. Like I thought a lot of people that I was friends with growing up, or people that I you know I went out on dates with, were INFPs. No, they weren't. They were all jumper IJs. You know,
Oh,
you know, because I didn't know about the OPS code back then, you know, but now that I do, I realize they're not weird with people, you know, like maybe one of them was, but the rest were not. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. It's like, you just, you can't even fight it. It's going to happen it's just going to be natural. Like you're going to hang out with, you're an IJ, you're going to hang out with EPs. I'm an EP, I'm going to hang out with IJs. So
totally.
it's like a puzzle is complete, you know? So it's definitely weird that way.
Yeah, because we bring together one of every function, so it just sort of all lines up.
Yeah, you can't have the same function because you're gonna kill each other because then you know your role in the tribe is taken by someone else. You know, at the end of the day, you know we try to find our place in the tribe, and if someone is taking your role, like there's another IJ in a place, you're gonna be like looking at each other weird, right? You're like, this person is what? He's doing better than me. He's consuming what? Like
I do have to say that I've really loved being able to see my type twins, because Dave and Chen have typed at least 2 of them in classes,
Right.
Aziz Ansari and Chuatal,
Okay.
and then Cesar Milan. And I thought that I would find it really aggravating, but they're all really sweet, and I feel kind of proud and special to be like part of their 512 group.
Okay, well,
I
I'm
know
glad
if
you
I,
feel
if
that
I could
way.
develop the skill, I would love to just get better at like really finding betas just in the world, to just get better at hearing it, because then I would trust more of my play, that I'd be connecting to other betas through play, and that kind of get it, maybe. Yeah.
All right, Dan. I have last 2 questions for you, and we'll wrap up the interview. So first one is, let's talk about tidal waves. SE tidal waves. Have you had any big SE tidal waves in your life?
Yeah, sure. Probably it's too traumatic to even talk about, but I just will suffer from not having gathered the options, not having seen what the options really were in the real world, and having just told myself that intuition story all by itself in a vacuum, and that can be really jarring. Even now, with academia, I know for a fact that COVID has caused academia to shrink. So I've gathered in like a fact about the world, but I still don't know how to pivot, or how to really to take that SE, or to take that sensory about the world and go, okay, now I'm going to start problem solving based on it. Yeah, so that's a dilemma that I just wish every day I was like, now's the time to like find new options. It's just so exhausting to gather. Gather's scary. The sensory world is just it's gross.
While you were saying the story about pivoting, it made me think of survival of the fittest, and it's adapt or survive. That's kind of like the human motto, and it just started making me picture the only reason why IJ survived to begin with was because when they were about to fall off a cliff, the tribe dragged them with them. It's like, hey, you need to stop doing this crazy crap, and we gotta go. You're gonna be dead if otherwise. And they probably physically like drag you and like your type essentially to save your life, because otherwise, and of course the IJs have saved everyone too, like from famine and all that stuff, right? So, and that when you mentioned about academia is shrinking and you're having trouble pivoting, it made me think too at the start of the pandemic. I have 2 YouTube channels. Before my main one was my travel YouTube channel and my travel blog that I've already spent 5 years building on it. So imagine 5 years spent like building something, gathering information, organizing the information, only to find out the pandemic scare, this industry is completely obliterated. Okay, our travel is recovering now, but it's not going to be fully at what it was for another 5 to 10 years. It's really in shambles. That's when I made a decision to pivot to ENFP Male, my interview and my YouTube channel, and I'm like, oh my god, had I never had 2 going on at one time, I would be dead. Like if I put everything in one basket, I would be dead right now. Like and it was an easy transition for me to the personality stuff because I had 2 going on one time, and I'm like, oh my god, it's like the one moment in my life where I like, thank God I'm an EP, like thank God, oh my god, because if you're an IJ, if you're in the right industry, okay, you're fine, but if you're in the wrong one, oh, what are you gonna do? You're screwed, right? So it's like, ugh, So when you were talking about like the difficulty of pivoting, I was like, oh, geez, it must be scary for you guys. I don't even know how you would deal with it. Like, what if your whole industry is just like kapoop, and you've spent your whole life building on this? Like, what are you gonna do? Have you ever thought about
Yeah.
that? Like, what are you gonna do?
Um,
Because you're an IJ, so you think about contingency plans, right? So what are you gonna do?
um, I don't know if I think about contingency plans, like
Okay,
the
maybe that's an INTJ
the
thing.
of like of following that intuitive waypoint that's way out there, like basically on the horizon. Like that's so seductive, but knowing all the different routes to get there, that's the part where I need to draw other people's perspectives. Yeah, because I'm sure there's multiple things that I could do to get there. It's just not my strength at gathering those options.
But your intuition is feminine, so it's flexible. So you're not going to be as stubborn with this. So can you talk about that real quick? Like, yes, even though you are NI and you do see more of a linear path towards your seductive, intuitive vision that you see, because it's
Mm,
because it's feminine. You know, like you said earlier, there's multiple ways to get there. So are you okay with
yeah.
that then? Like, does it matter for you how you get to the end point as long as you're going towards the direction? Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Uh, it doesn't really matter, and I think NI and FE sort of join together to create abstract of value. So I guess it's sort of like my version of FI, but it's those two things joining together. So as long as I feel that I'm producing something valuable, I'm pretty chill with what the specifics are. But it has been like a real problem in my working life is if I put effort in, I want to see the ethical value of it at the end. And when there's none, I get kind of like the notes of existential crisis that you're getting from Dave and Shan's recent classes. Like it starts to trigger that in me, like, oh, but I've strayed from my path from what's really important. Feminine intuition. It's just like it's just friendly to the sensory. Like uh it's hard to say. Like even with ASMR, like that is a sensory event, but I'm just like, well, my intuitions are friendly towards this. Like I can make connections and I can respect the sensory, even if I'm not like great at the sensory or going all in on the gather or the experience. Yeah, it is like a type of respect. Yeah, I'm not. I have to think about how to express it better, but um, in the video on masculine intuition, where Dave and Shan show like the shelf with all the laundry products done by color, I'm like, no, the intuitive categories aren't that important. Like function and accessibility makes sense to me, but yeah, that that video helped me really see that I wasn't masculine intuition.
All right, Dan, last question for you. So this one is something I personally am very curious about. So NF, this is an NF question. So your lead NF with your NIFE. NF is correlated with purpose and meaning, as well as your life mission. The interesting thing is NF can manifest in different animals, and that's essentially where you would find meaning and purpose. So if you were an INTJ or someone that has the same function stack, you would find meaning from within, because your NF is sleep, right? It's from within. If you're like me, an ENFP, or someone even an IxxJ or someone the same function stack, the NF is consume. So we get meaning from new experiences. New experiences that we've gathered feeds that sense of purpose, that meaning. And then you have the ENTPs, or the ISFJs, or those guys that have NEFE, NF play essentially. they get meaning from the tribe or interaction with the tribe or pinging off the tribe. I remember reading Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life, and he said that meaning is something that does not come, meaning is something that you don't derive from internally. I'm paraphrasing, of course. He said that it's something that comes to you. So he's talking about his NF play essentially, like he gets it from an external source. Obviously, that's not true because INTJs and those guys, they get from within. Now, yours is a little bit interesting. Your NF is blast. So the way I've always perceived NF blast, those type, like even ISTPs or ESTPs, they have NF in a blast state like you, like NIFE. From what I can see, your meaning in life and your purpose in life and your mission in life is to teach. Do you relate with that at all?
Yeah, 100%. It is, yeah. So my meaning, I guess, is that production from the self for others. I'm not bottling it all up for me, my. And I guess blast is also the get you started animal. So if I'm not like vibing, if I'm not on that NF path that they refer to, I find it really difficult to get started, to make things begin. And as much as I said before that I struggled with the concept of evangelism, I probably am like super preachy about anything because it's always like it's leaving me via the keyboard or via my mouth in a refined, digestible state that I'm exporting. Yeah. So maybe I need to start a YouTube channel. I kind of have a hunch on what my hook into both embodiment, emotion, and personality is, but I just have to be brave enough to do it.
Right, that's the DE story, right? Being able to do something for yourself. All right, Dan. Thanks for coming out and doing this interview. I know we had like a little bit of a time zone issue at first, but we thankfully we resolved that. Thank God for masculine sensory, so we got that covered. So even though you're SE at the bottom, you still figured out like the time zone difference and stuff. So that was cool. All right, yeah, enjoy the rest of your day and take care.
Okay, thanks for giving me some great ideas to mull over. I appreciate it.
For sure.
Ciao.